All right, so let's talk about our final unit, Unit 8. Unit 8 covers a topic related to ecology. It's a big unit, and there are lots of questions on the AP exam every year about this unit, so it's an important one to know. As I've said with every unit, the first thing you should do to study is look through those release multiple choice questions. Other than evolution, there are more questions about ecology than there are about any other topics on the AP exam. So go through that multiple choice document. Even if you have to come in before or after school, it's crucial that you study through the multiple choice questions. Next, make sure that you look through some sample free response questions. As always, I've linked up 4 or 5 here, and I've included both the questions and the scoring guidelines. Try to answer those questions and then use those scoring guidelines to grade your answers and figure out what you know and what you still need to learn. Next, make sure that you go through the rest of this presentation. As always, there are lots of screencasts embedded throughout. For topics that you aren't very familiar with, take a minute and watch those screencasts. None of them are very long, 5-6 minutes a piece. Take the time to look through those when you need to. And then finally, if you have some additional time, I've linked up the complete set of Unit 8 student notes right here. All right, here are the most important things to know from Unit 8. First of all, make sure you can describe some methods that ecologists use to measure or estimate population size. So this is using things like the grid method and also the mark recapture method. Make sure that you can interpret the different types of survivorship curves and that you can give some examples of specific organisms that follow each of the patterns. Make sure that you can interpret age-sex structures and that you can use those structures to predict future changes to a population size. Make sure that you can compare and contrast R and K selection life history strategies. Make sure you can calculate changes in a population size due to both exponential and logistic growth. And again, there are lots of practice problems linked in here, and there's a screencast that goes through even more sample calculations. Make sure you can describe at least 3 possible outcomes if a population overshoots carrying capacity. Be able to describe the different types of interspecific interactions. Here we're talking about things like competition, predation, and the different forms of symbiosis, like, for example, mutualism, commensalism, and parasitism. Be able to describe the effects of a foundation species, a keystone species, and invasive species on an environment. Make sure that you're able to describe the changes that occur during both primary and secondary forms of succession. Be able to describe the characteristics of the major biomes on Earth. And then finally, and maybe the most important one in this list, make sure that you can describe how matter is recycled as it moves through a food chain and how that energy flows through and eventually out of the food chain as heat. All right, those are the most important topics from Unit 8.